What happened to Hamas and Israel ceasefire? Hamas and Israel ceasefire and release the hostage. Before we proceed, welcome to our channel, that's 024 TV. Please subscribe to our channel for more. A halin da ake ciki dai ana batun ne a ga an yi yunkurin musanye tsakanin Hamas da kuma Israel, yayin da dai ake yunkurin ganin an tattauna domin ganin an sako mutanen da aka yi awon gaba da su tun a wancan lokaci. Sai dai kuma a halin da ake ciki dai rahotanni sun bayyana kan cewa Hamas delegation ya bayyana ne domin ganin an gudanar da sulhu, wanda da aka bayyana za a gudanar da su a Egypt domin ganin a ga an samo matsalaha da kuma matsaya tsakanin abubuwan da suke wakana tsakanin Israel da kuma kasar ta Hamas, inda dai Palestinians suke yunkurin ganin su ma an ba su yanci domin dai su ma sun zama ƙasa masu cikakken yanci. Haka kuma zalika dai a halin da ake ciki dai shugaban kasar Amurka wato Donald Trump yana da iya bakin kokarin sa domin ganin an tabbatar da cewa wannan fada da ke wakana tsakanin Isra'ila da kuma Falastinawa musamman bangaren Hamas da kuma irin yadda Isra'ila ta jima tana tarwatsa Gaza, yana so ya ga dai wannan al'amara dai ya zo karshe. Wato Khalil Alhaya, wanda da ya kasance babban daga cikin Hamas delegation, shi ma dai ya ziyarci gurin da ake tattaunawa domin ganin dai an samar da sulhu tsakanin Isra'il din da kuma kasar. Sai dai Donald Trump dai kamar yadda ya bayyana a shafinsa na Twitter wato X, wanda ka fi sani da X, inda ya bayyana akan cewa akwai abubuwa da za a wakanar, wanda za a gudanar da taro a ranar Monday inda za a haɗu a can kasar ta Egypt domin dai a ga an tattauna hanyoyin da ya dace a biya kawo ƙarshen irin wa'annan yakin da aka jima aka ɗauki sama da kusan shekaru biyu kenan ana gwabzawa tsakanin Isra'ila da kuma Hamas, wanda tun a wancan lokaci inda Hamas sun kai wani mummunar farmaki wanda ake wa lakabi da 7 Oktoba, wanda wannan harin ya gagarumin matukar tayarwa da hankalin kasar ta Isra'ila hankali, musamman ma Benjamin Netanyahu, wanda tun daga lokacin ne dai Isra'ila take ci gaba da kai farmaki sai ta tabbatar da cewa ta tarwatsa Gaza da kuma wasu bangarori a Palestine. A yanzu dai halin da ke ciki dai shugaban kasar Amurka Donald Trump yana iya bakin kokarin sa domin ganin an samar da sulhu, kamar yadda dai wasu delegation daga can yankin Qatar da Dubai ake gudanarwa a can yankin na Egypt domin a ga an tattauna, musamman ma dai kan kalaman da Trump ya yi. Sai dai shi ma Benjamin Netanyahu ya yi wasu maganganu akan Hamas din akan cewa tabbas matukar idan ana son kawo karshen wannan abubuwa da suke wakana, tufa dole sai an sako musu mutanen su da yankin Hamas din suka jima suka yi garkuwa da su. A nan da ake ciki dai Donald Trump ya bayyana kan cewa zai iya bakin kokarin sa domin ganin an kawo karshen wannan yaki da ke wakana, sannan kuma a baiwa kasar ta Palestinu damar su ma a ba su ma su tabbatar da cewa kasa ne masu cikakken yanci. Isra'ila ta jima tana kai munanan farmake-farmake a Gaza, kuma babban burin Isra'ila musamman ma Benjamin Netanyahu su ne dai su ga a ce kasar ta Palestinu a ce ba kasa bace mai yanci, ya fi so a ce a mai ta koma jiha a yankin na Isra'il, wanda kuma su kuma 'yan Hamas sun bayyana kan cewa kwata-kwata hakan ba zai taɓa yiwuwa ba. To halin da ke ciki da yanzu dai shugaban kasar Amurka Donald Trump yana da iya bakin kokarinsa ne domin ganin an shawo kan irin matsaloli da suke wakana da kuma hanyoyin da ya dace a bi domin ganin an yi releasing na hostage wanda Hamas din suka yi awon gaba da su da kuma waɗanda Isra'ila suka kama. Sai dai kuma an bayyana kan cewa akwai wasu wanda sun riga mu gidan gaskiya da Hamas ta bayyana kan cewa duk dai za a sako su. After 2 years of war, there's a chance of a deal that will end the killing and destruction in Gaza and return the Israel hostage, living and dead, to their families. It is an opportunity, but it is not a content that it will be seized by Hamas and Israel. It is a grim coincidence that the talks are happening exactly 2 years after Hamas inflicted trauma on Israelis that is still acute. The 7 October attack killed around 1,200 people, mostly Israel civilians, and 251 were taken hostage. The Israelis estimate that 20 hostages are still alive, and they want the return of the bodies of 28 others. Israel's devastating military response has destroyed most of Gaza and killed more than 66,000 Palestinians, mostly civilians and including more than 18 children. The figure comes from the health ministry that is part of the remain of the Hamas administration. Its statistics have usually been regarded as a reliable. A study in the Lancet, the medical journal journal based in London suggested they were underestimated. Israelis and Palestinians both want the war to end. Israel, a war weary, and polls show that a majority want a deal that returns the hostages and ends the war. Hundreds of thousands of reservists in the armed forces, the IDF, want to get back to their life after many months in uniform on active service. More than 2 million Palestinians in Gaza are in a humanitarian catastrophe, caught between the firepower of the IDF and hunger, and in some areas a man-made famine created by Israel restriction on aid entering the Strip. The version of Hamas that was able to attack Israel with the Western force 2 years ago has long since been broken as current military organization. It has become an urban guerrilla force mounting an insurgency against the IDF in the areas. Hamas want to find a way to survive, even though it has agreed to give up power to Palestinian technocrats. It accepts it will have to hand over a dismantle what is left of its heavy weapons, but it wants to keep enough firepower to defend itself against Palestinians who want to take their revenge for nearly 2 decades of brutal rule and the catastrophe the Hamas attack brought down on them. It is not saying so publicly, but an organization that still has followers and a charter that seeks to destroy Israel will also want to emerge with enough left to rebuild its capacity to live up its name, which is an acronym for the Islamic Resistance Movement. Israel would like to be dictating the terms of Hamas surrender, but the fact that Hamas has changed for a serious negotiation opens up more possibility for it than looked likely just a month ago. That was when Israel tried and failed to kill the Hamas leadership in a series of strikes on a building in Doha, where they were discussing peace proposal from Donald Trump. The main target, the senior leader Khalid al-Hayya, is leading the Hamas delegation at the talk in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh. Al-Hayya's son was among the dead. 2 of the leaders escaped with their life. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has a different kind of survival in mind. He wants to preserve his power, keep on postponing his trial for corruption, win election due next year, and not to go down in history as the leader responsible for security blunders that lead to the deadliest day for Jews since the Nazi Holocaust. To achieve that, he needs a credible way to declare total victory, a phrase he has used repeatedly. He has defined it as the return of the hostage, the destruction of Hamas, and the demoralization of Gaza. If he cannot do that, it will not be enough for him to point to the very real damage Israel has inflicted on its enemies in Lebanon and Iran in the last 2 years. Hamas and Israel negotiators will not meet face to face. Egyptians and Qatari officials will be the intermediaries, and the American who will also be there will be major influence, perhaps a deceived one. The basis for the talk is Donald Trump's 20-point Gaza peace plan. What it will not do, despite his social media posting about permanent peace, is end the long conflict between Israel and Palestinians for control of the land between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. It does not mention the future of West Bank, the other part of the terrorists the UK and others have recognized as the state of Palestine. The stakes are high in Sharm el-Sheikh. There's a chance to get the ceasefire that could lead to the end of the most destructive and bloody war in well over a century of conflict between Arabs and Jews. The first challenge is to work out conditions for the release of the Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinians' civil life sentenced in Israel jail and Gazan who have been detained without trial since the war started. That is not a simple task. President Donald Trump wants to result. First, he wants to revive his ambition to broker a grand bargain in the Middle East, at the center of which will be a rapprochement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. That cannot happen when Israel is killing huge numbers of Palestinian civilians in Gaza and imposing restrictions on humanitarian aid that are causing great suffering. And when Hamas is holding Israel hostage, the Saudis have also made it very clear in a series of populist statements that it also cannot happen without a clear and irreversible path to an independent Palestinian state. Trump forced Netanyahu to sign up to a document that includes an admittedly but an indeterminate reference to the responsibility of Palestinian independence. In a statement afterward, Netanyahu chose to ignore that by repeating his pledge that Palestinians will never get a state. There is a lot in the Trump document that Israel wants in terms of ending the power of Hamas and the future governance of Gaza. But Netanyahu has been used to garden his own way in the Oval Office. Instead, Trump forced him to reach out a formal apology to Qatar Prime Minister for their strike that failed to wipe out the Hamas leadership. Trump needs Qatar on board to move ahead with his ambition to remark the Middle East. One question is, why Hamas is prepared to give up the hostage without a strict timetable for Israel to leave Gaza and end the war? One possibility is that the Qatari have persuaded them that Trump will make sure that happens if they give him the chance to claim victory by repatriating all Israel hostages, living and dead. Even so, Donald Trump is still using language that Netanyahu needs Israelis to hear, like his threat to Hamas if they rejected the deal, promising my full bargain for Israel to go ahead to destroy Hamas. The U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said it will take only a few days to work out if Hamas is seriously. It will take longer to thrash out the nuts and bolts that will need to underpin a complex agreement. So far, all they have is a strong framework. 2 years after the long and unresolved conflict between Israel and Palestinians exploring into Gaza, where it is a major challenge to end the killing and secure the immediate future for Palestinians and Israel. It will take skillful diplomacy and prolong against with the detail of which there is a previous little in the Trump 20-point plan. Trying to find previous language that will fill in the gaps will provide plenty of potential stumbling blocks. No one has higher opinion than Trump himself of his ability to make deals. In foreign policy, the delivery so far has not matched his boss. He has not settled a slew of wars. The exact count of how many he claimed to have ended varies depending on how he tells it. Israel marked 2 years since 7 October Hamas attack as Gaza ceasefire talk continue as it happened. Israel gathered to commemorate the second anniversary of the Hamas-led attack in which 1,200 people were killed. This life blocked. Israelis gathered to mark 2 years since 7 October Hamas. Israelis have gathered across the country to mark the second anniversary of the Hamas-led 7 October attack in which about 1,200 people mostly civilians, were killed and 251 taken hostage during an unprecedented assault on southern Israel. Unofficially, commemorations have been held in the small kibbutzim of southern Israel whose members were killed or kidnapped, and a large rally will be held in Tel Aviv to call for the release of the remaining hostages from Hamas captivity in Gaza. A separate government memorial is set to be held on the Hebrew calendar anniversary next week in Israel National Cemetery on Mount Haz. People held a moment of silence at the site of Israel Nova Music Festival to remember the victims of the 7 October attack early this morning, and bereaved family and survivors have been gathering since to commemorate victims. The festival site was the Negev Desert near the Rim kibbutz close to the Gaza border, which was overrun by Hamas fighters during the attack. Hamas militants killed 360 people and kidnapped dozens of others at the festival site where about 3,500 people had been partying.